How you doing, everyone? And welcome to Direct Dreadnought Gundam and More on PS4. And this is the MS-09F Trope, or the Dom Tropen. And welcome back to Gundam Sunday. So we're going to jump right back into the lore, and I thought, what better mobile suit to do it with than the dreaded Dom Tropen. Now, the Dom Tropen is the end lineage for the Earth-based Dom, and we've talked a little about the Dom in the past, and we're going to get into it right here because the Dom is a very infamous and powerful mobile suit that struck fear into Federation pilots and even gave Amuro Ray and the famous Gundam a very hard time. What's ironic about the Dom Tropen is that the Dom Tropen, like the Zamel mobile armor and the Gelgoog Marine, are Zeon mobile suits that really did not get to show their power and performance during the 1 Year War because they were developed so late into the war. But even after the 1 Year War, when pitted against superior and more technologically advanced post-war Federation designs, these mobile suits and mobile armors proved to be more than a match for most Federation rookie pilots, even in superior machines. The Dom Tropen is a desert tropical variant. In fact, that's what Tropen stands for. Tropen means tropical in German, and the Dom Tropen is a modified Dom 5. And the modifications were so that this mobile suit could operate in the desert and tropical climates without the need for much maintenance. But although these bases never got to use or sortie with the Dom Tropen, this accidentally produced a very powerful, robust, hit-and-run mobile suit that turned out to be perfect for the Zeon remnants that were left on Earth at the tail end of the war and even several years after the war. In one specific instance, decades after the war, which is quite amazing. The story of the Dom Tropen starts, of course, with the original MS-09 Dom, and the Dom was supposed to be the ultimate ground-based mobile suit. The Zaku 2, even though it had proven its worth in the early months of the war, was now beginning to show age when compared to the new Federation mobile suits, much notably the Jim and especially the Gundam. And when it was on Earth, although the Zaku 2 had excellent performance in space where it could use its speed to mitigate its size, and space being such an open environment, the Zaku 2 could thrive. But when on Earth, the Zaku 2 was very susceptible to IEDs, ambushes, guerrilla tactics, and tank traps that were set up by the Federation while they were using stopgap measures before they could get mobile suits of their own. And so the Zeonic company tried to put out a bigger, tougher mobile suit than the Zaku, and that was the Gouf. But the Gouf had several of the problems that the Zaku 2 had. And so Zimond, which had lost out the contracts for Zeon when its original design, the Zuda, failed to meet the standards of the Zeon Space Forces and Army, and the Zaku 2 was chosen instead as their main mobile suit, decided to bounce back with a very innovative design. This design was very, very heavily armored and extremely fast and carried excellent firepower. That was the Dom. The Dom's size enabled it to have several turbofans, so it was not only engine and thruster powered, but had turbofans in its armored skirt and in its very bulbous, almost bell-bottom legs, so that it could literally hover on the ground, and so its thrusters could give it continuous speed. This thing was as fast as a helicopter, packed the firepower with its large bazookas of a seagoing or even land battleship, and it had many tricks up its sleeve and could handle hand-to-hand combat very well. It could get out of trouble and was extremely well armored, so it could actually survive many ambushes and traps. But the problem was that A, of course, it was a little more expensive to make. B, Zeon was now leaving Earth as it was defeated in the Battle of Odessa, and it was also defeated in Southeast Asia, and again defeated when it tried to take out Jabral, the main headquarters of the Earth Federation in South America. Xeon left for space and no longer really required a large production line of terrestrial-based mobile suits. And of course, there was the problem of Earth itself with all the dust, the humidity, the heat, the rain, the leaves, the thickets. It was just really a hard time for any turbofan or hover engines, and it just created all sorts of maintenance problems for all the Xeon mobile suits on Earth. Well, this all changed during the, of course, United Maintenance Plan. We've talked a little about that with other mobile suits. The United Maintenance Plan was put forth in basically October to November. It started in September, but really October to November during the 1-year war is when Xeon took a look at itself and said, hey, we are fighting on many fronts. We have a lot of political intrigue. We have a lot of division when it comes to research and trying to get money and resources for all these various projects. They saw how the Federation had streamlined its production and maintenance and decided that it should do the same, or at least try to. And so the space-based mobile suits were all upgraded and given a commonality of as many parts as possible, and the production was streamlined in Side 3 and on Luna. And so the Dom turned into the RIC-Dom 2, the RIC-Dom being the space version of the terrestrial-based Dom, in which they took all the hover engines off it and just put space thrusters, and so the Dom became very, very fast and armored in space and could still carry a lot of firepower, but it was still very expensive to produce. So the RIC-Dom 2 became the post-United Maintenance Plan Dom for the Space Forces. Of course, the Zaku Kai became the new Zaku after the United Maintenance Plan, and then we had many Gelgoogs and Gelgoog variants that went into full-blown production. But the Xeon forces, although they had been mainly vanquished on Earth, still had a lot of territory in Australia, especially Africa, and of course parts of the Eurasian continent. So they decided to give those ground forces a limited production run of ground-based Gelgoogs, of artillery support Gelgoogs, and newer, better Doms that had better thrust capability, better armor, and were more suited to the awful climates on Earth, and that would be the Dom Funf. The Dom Funf also got a rapid-fire, high-output, very high millimeter, very high damaging Rakuten bazooka to complement its 360 millimeter bazooka, and of course the new MMP automatic tank cannons that replaced the Zaku machine gun, new hand grenades, all sorts of new weaponry for the Dom Funf, even prototype beam rifles that were given to the Dom line now that the Gelgoog line went into full production with the mass production variant of the beam rifles that was based on these prototypes. So they were just throwing whatever they could at the Earth forces without spending too much resources to help the Earth Xeon stay in the fight. Because of the terrain that these Xeon remnants were in, mainly parts of Asia and of course Africa and the deserts of Australia, very quickly they decided to put forth a prototype testbed to increase the survivability, to decrease maintenance, and to make life easier for these Doms, which were really the ideal mobile suit for the now hit-and-run tactics that the Xeon remnants on Earth had to use in order to survive, and decided to make the Dom Tropen off this prototype. And it used nuclear ram thrust engines, which are particularly bad for the environment, but when you want to destroy the Earth Federation, the environment of Earth no longer really matters to you. So these were nuclear-powered ram thrust engines that didn't have many moving parts, and if you shot them and they exploded would be particularly bad for everybody. But if the Dom could avoid this fate, these engines made it move extremely fast with very, very low maintenance and no need for fuel. Of course, it had a very high output generator to give it power for years and years if necessary, which no one thought that it would need, but turned out that they would be using for many years to come. And of course had increased turbofan thrusters and normal engines with thicker armor than even the Dom Fumpf, and a very comprehensive maintenance package and lots of ducts, seals, and vents to prevent dust and other particulates from Earth getting into these components, which made this mobile suit the ideal mobile suit for any force on the run or that had to switch locations often or go into hiding. It could use the entire gambit of Zeon weaponry, and because of the United Maintenance Plan and some help from Anaheim Electronics behind the scenes, the Dom Fumpf and the Dom Tropen, as well as other mobile suits from the United Maintenance Plan, could also use Federation weaponry and shields as well. So this mobile suit was very hard to destroy, very, very fast, could move exceptionally fast, especially in desert terrain, which was amazing, and these mobile suits were just an absolute terror in the African theater. In fact, the Federation, even though it had given up most terrestrial designs, decided to make the Armored GM, the Desert GM, and many other GMs just to combat the Dom, and particularly the Dom Tropen. The Dom Tropen really didn't see much combat during the 1 Year War. It did get a lot of notoriety with the Midnight Fenrir Corps, which the game Zeonic Front is based on, and the Midnight Fenrir Corps used this mobile suit to do hit and run raids and to really take it to the Federation while minimizing losses and also not giving the Federation a chance to wipe them out, since their resources were extremely limited. So this mobile suit is particularly dangerous, and it just excels at taking out small numbers of Federation forces, raiding supplies, going into hiding, and outrunning enemy forces. And when it does get cornered, man, oh man, does this thing have the firepower and capability to survive. But something that you note about the Dom Tropen is that, unlike the original Dom, it really doesn't want close quarter combat. It uses its speed to hit and fade and carries an exceptional amount of firepower, and was extremely modified by the Zeon pilots, mechanics, and engineers in the field, which it was a very forgiving design, and these soldiers and pilots heavily modified this mobile suit with whatever they could to increase its survivability and utility. A typical loadout for this mobile suit was, of course, a giant bazooka, an MMP submachine gun, all sorts of rockets, and of course the Panzerfaust one-shot weapons, which the Zeon remnants had plenty of and were very inexpensive, as well as options for the chest beam laser, which could be a beam laser that blinded sensors or could even do damage, or this could be replaced with grenade launchers for smoke or chaff. And of course this thing was capable of holding all sorts of ammo. The engines could easily propel it no matter how much weight was on it, so it had plenty of room for extra ammunition, extra clips, multiple Panzerfausts, and all sorts of grenades. Some of these grenades were even guided. In Gundam Unicorn, we see a Dom Tropen using grenades that were self-guiding, and it was quite amazing to watch. So this thing was chock full of firepower, and that is reflected in the game, as this is not a melee mech, even though many Zeon mobile suits are more close-quarter, melee-oriented mobile suits. This is a mobile suit that stays on the move and delivers unforgiving firepower with multiple ways to stun lock enemy players and to capitalize on the damage. It doesn't have a melee hit controller, so it can only hit once, but many times you only want to hit once, so you want to stun a mobile suit, hit them once, keep moving, switch to the machine gun, switch to the Panzerfaust. The Panzerfaust does tremendous damage. It's often more worth using the Panzerfaust and then recovering with your MMP machine gun than it is trying to go into that dangerous melee range. Of course, there's downsides to this mobile suit in that it is a very large target, which is the same for many mobile suits and mobile armors late in the 1 Year War. It had so much armor, weaponry, thrusters and generator capability that it just increased its bulk and size, making it a very large target. And even though it was very well armored, it didn't really have any shielding, it didn't have Gundanium armor, and it could take a lot of damage and eventually be brought down. So it was a two-edged sword. That size gave it a lot of mass and a lot of capability, but was also a bad thing for the mobile suit as it was easy to hit. What makes this suit amazing is that it got notoriety with the Midnight Fenrir Corps and other Zeon remnants late in the war. It was used by the Delos fleet during Operation Stardust to Gundam Jack Gundam Unit 2, and afterwards Zeon remnants of the Kimberlite forces engaged Federation forces in the deserts of Africa, and even years later, during the events of Gundam Unicorn, Zeon remnants attacked Torrington Base. Yet again, Torrington Base always gets attacked by at least one Dom Tropen, which was still operational in the field almost 2 decades after the 1-year war, still using its speed, versatility, and firepower to survive. But unfortunately, this mobile suit was brought down by Federation Londo Bell Justas. It just could not compete with mobile suits that had almost 20 years more technological development. But what a long-lived mobile suit, and there weren't many Dom Tropens made. It is estimated that as few as 24 to maybe 48 max were ever made and put into the field, and they were so hard to kill and survived much longer than the government that made them did, which is quite amazing. I just can't believe it. As you can see in these replays, I had a tremendous amount of time. I wasn't interested in the Dom line because I'm not a huge Dom fan myself, even though I love the lore behind them and I could talk about it for days. What an awesome mobile suit as far as lore, design, and history goes. I think that part is great. As for me, I don't actually like the design, but I did get a loot drop in which I got a level 4 Dom Tropen, and I said, well, I'm not a Dom kind of guy, but I will still use this mobile suit because I like the design, I like the lore, and it is not like other Doms. You really try to avoid hand-to-hand combat, and it delivers so much firepower. It has a machine gun, which I like, but it has that large bazooka for stunning, and then you can either capitalize with a machine gun or a melee hit, and of course while you're reloading, or if you have a chance to get the drop on another mobile suit, you can use the Panzerfaust, and against raids that can do upwards of 3,000 damage and do a major stun lock for them, which allows you to just go in there and do what you need to do. It's a very good, hard-hitting, very mobile, fast, firepower-based, long-range-based mobile suit. And even though the drop I got, it was a level 4, it only had a level 1 bazooka. I decided to take it out anyway, and I just could not decide which of the first videos should be the one that I post in this lore video, because they were all good. I believe the one I wound up posting was either my first or second one, and I was up against some pretty tough and mean mobile suits, and so I liked it so much I decided to buy the level 1 350 point Dom Tropen and use that in 350 point matches, and that is going well too. So I don't really like to get into the stun lock game. I think it's very cheap, and I don't like melee combat. I like the mid to long range aspects of Gundam Battle Operation 2, but this mobile suit is a good compromise. It's a lot of fun to play, very fast paced. It has just enough stun to keep raids away from your supports, but it still has that kind of firepower I like from the Gym line of constant pressure from the middle range and making a stable formation and keeping the battle line set so that other types of mobile suits can still do their job. Well, I think that'll do it for the Dom Tropen, a very interesting mobile suit and a very awesome one to play in the game of Mobile Suit Gundam Battle Operation 2. That's it from me for now, and I'll see you soon in Sin Li Bay.